Marina, I always like to ask this of my guests. What's your favorite story about your parents,
Oh, there are probably many. My mom is the number one packer in the world. So when I was young and I was in school in England, I would pack my bags because I was supposed to be grown up enough.
Right.
And in the middle of the night, she'd come and rearrange everything. And it would be perfect. It was so perfect that when customs used to open your bags, when you come in,
Sure, yeah.
they would actually comment on how well packed it is. But my greatest triumph is that I have taught my mother another way of packing, and she's accepted. She's open to change and learning.
And how about your father?
My father, well, there are many stories because he's a very funny man, but I like the stories where I get to one-up him a bit.
Okay.
And I was once at an AIDS conference in South Africa, I think. Right. And in AIDS conferences, it's much safer to call everyone doctor because everyone's a medical doctor or a scientist or PhD, except for us poor NGOs. But anyway, since you don't know, you just call everyone doctor. So I did this panel, and at the end of it, this judge, Justice Edwin Cameron from South Africa, wonderful man, summarized everything. And you know how judges, they can just listen and then they summarize everything. And he was talking about, who said this and who's that, and he kept going. And Dr. Mahathir said this, and Dr. Mahathir concluded this. And I kept thinking, when did Dad ever say that? And after a while, it dawned on me, no, he's talking about me. I'm Dr. Mahathir.
Okay, they've elevated you to a PhD.
Yes,
okay.
so I had to go home and say, you're not the only Dr. M in the world,
So, Marina, do tell us about your immediate family, which is quite multinational.
Well, I was married to a Frenchman.
Right.
And we lived in Japan for a while, and we had a daughter who is not Japanese, she's French. So she has a French passport, although she's grown up in Malaysia all her life. And then after that, we split up, and then I remarried an Indonesian, and he already had a son. So he's got an Indonesian passport and the son has got an Indonesian passport. So by that time I was feeling really quite crowded out because I was the only one with a Malaysian passport. So when we had a child, a daughter, I insisted that she had to have a Malaysian passport. Right. So when we travel, there are 3 different passports.
And 3 different lanes probably.
3 different lanes, yes, depending on where we're going.
Recently you were by the bedside of your husband, your first husband, Didier, who passed away. Mm-hmm. How did you, end up being by his bedside?
We've been divorced actually for almost 20 years. He lived in Malaysia. And he happened this time to be on holiday in France and then on his way back. And then he felt ill and was hospitalized. And we got a call from his family asking for Inessa, our daughter, to go and see him because it was really, very, very serious. So I decided to go along with her because this was her first experience, of possible bereavement, and I was very worried about it for her. So I went along and we spent 10 days there and visited him every day. And he actually pulled back from the brink and walked out of hospital 10 days later. And we felt quite safe to leave him. And the doctors gave him a little bit of time, 3 to 6 months. So we decided to come back and make some other plans and for her to go again to see him and all that. Sadly, a month later, they called us again and said he's very, very ill and could Inessa come back to France. And so she did, and she managed to see him for 1.5 days before he passed away. And it was a very, and then we went for his funeral.
And both your present
My
husband,
husband
Tara,
and I went along for the funeral, and I'm very glad that we did. I'm very glad that I had the 10 days with him because without a lot being said, I think that we kind of resolved a lot of things, It's
a blessing, actually.
It was a real blessing. I feel very grateful. And then when we went back for the funeral and I saw his family, whom I hadn't seen for almost 20 years, and they were really the kindest nicest, warmest people, and they were very, very sensitive to all our feelings. They, and when they put the death notice in the papers, after my daughter's name, it was my name. So really acknowledging, my history with him. And then they were very, very sensitive about any, possible religious issues and all that. And I didn't want to make a fuss at all. I thought this is their place, and I'm just happy that he's being laid to rest among those he loved and all that, and that's fine.
All worked out very beautifully.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marina, for sharing that very tender experience. Thank you.